It began with a dare that neither of them called love. Rafael Ortiz Hahn, 37, taught philosophy at a private college in upstate New York, the kind of man who mistook intensity for depth. His student, Clara Moreau, 25, came from Paris by way of Houston, sharp and magnetic. Her mind built for dismantling people like him. When she first approached him after a lecture titled, The Ethics of Self-Destruction, she said, "You talk about ruin like it's theoretical. I think you should try it sometime." He smiled, intrigued. That was how it started. At first, it was harmless, a mentorship, late-night emails about Kierkegaard, long walks that lingered too long near her apartment. But philosophy, he told her once, was just seduction in disguise. And Clara, with her disarming laugh and surgical precision, took that as instruction. She began to quote him in her essays, twisting his ideas until they became accusations. "You said love is surrender," she told him one night. "So why do you resist every time I look at you like I mean it?" Their affair was slow violence disguised as intimacy. She visited his office under the pretense of drafts and revisions. But her presence turned the room electric. She'd touch the corner of his desk, trace her finger over the edge of a book spine. And suddenly every moral conviction he'd ever taught felt like theater. They began meeting in a small motel outside town. One of those places that smelled of bleach and regret. He told himself it was a crisis of passion. She called it a study in power. When she began recording their conversations, he didn't notice. It wasn't for blackmail, she said. She wanted to archive honesty. The recordings captured everything, his arrogance, his collapse. The precise moment his voice softened from intellect into confession. "You're going to destroy me," he told her once, half smiling. She kissed him and said, "I know. You're teaching me how." It unraveled quietly. Rumors spread. Someone leaked excerpts of her dissertation draft, a treatise on the erotics of ruin. The examples were anonymous but unmistakable. His words appeared verbatim, stripped of context, turned into case studies of hypocrisy. He was suspended before the semester ended. She defended her thesis that spring. It passed unanimously. When he finally confronted her, she didn't gloat. She looked almost tender. "You wanted to be understood," she said softly. "I just made sure the world listened." He laughed bitterly. "You ruined me." "No," she replied. "You asked me to finish your argument." Months later, she published a book based on her thesis. It became a cultural phenomenon. Critics called it the intellectual autopsy of a generation that confuses vulnerability with virtue. She dedicated it to him, by initials only, with a single line beneath. For the one who believed destruction was a theory. He moved to the city under another name, teaching part-time, avoiding mirrors. But late at night, he'd find himself searching for her interviews online. Watching her speak with calm precision about the architecture of power. "To teach someone how to love you," she said in one, "is to give them the blueprint for your undoing." He never reached out. He didn't have to. Every time she spoke, he recognized the rhythm of his own thoughts inside her voice. And sometimes, in the quiet between sleep and waking, he swore he could hear her whisper again, not with malice, not with pity, but with a kind of gentle completion. "You taught me how to destroy you. I just perfected the lesson." By the second act, Rafael Ortiz Hahn had learned that destruction, once taught, never forgets its student. His name had become academic poison, whispered in conference corridors, erased from syllabi, a ghost footnote in a field he once ruled. Meanwhile, Clara Moreau had ascended. Her book, The Erotics of Ruin, became scripture for a generation raised on apology and spectacle. They called her a philosopher of disassembly, the voice of necessary cruelty. She smiled through every interview, calm, luminous, untouchable. When asked about her mentor, she'd say, "He taught me clarity." No one understood how sharp that word really was. Raphael had retreated to a small apartment in Queens, teaching online ethics seminars to bored undergrads. He drank too much coffee, slept too little, spoke to no one. But he couldn't stop reading about her, every essay, every feature. She had become the perfect inversion of him. Where he'd been moral, she was precise. Where he'd been indulgent, she was deliberate. He had made her powerful. That was the part that kept him awake at night. Then one day, he received a letter, handwritten, no return address. The paper smelled faintly of jasmine and smoke. "You once said knowledge without consequence is cowardice. I thought I'd invite you to witness the aftermath," it read. Attached was a ticket to her lecture at Columbia, The Ethics of Self-Destruction, Reconsidered. He shouldn't have gone, but guilt has its own gravitational pull. And so he found himself in the crowded auditorium, watching her step onto the stage in a black suit that swallowed the light. She began without introduction, her voice steady and low. "My former mentor once argued that self-destruction is the final form of truth. I've come to believe he was wrong. Destruction isn't truth, it's translation." Then she gestured toward the screen behind her. His words appeared, verbatim, from his unpublished manuscript, the one he'd buried in an encrypted file years before she met him. Paragraphs unfolded like confession, each one annotated with her commentary, dissected, inverted. "He thought ruin was loss," she said, pacing slowly. "But ruin is language evolving beyond its author." The audience applauded. He sat frozen. Somehow she'd found it, his hidden draft, his private proof of failure, and turned it into performance. He waited until the crowd thinned before approaching her backstage. She didn't seem surprised to see him. "I wondered if you'd come," she said, unbuttoning her microphone. "You're consistent, if nothing else." "How did you get it?" he asked quietly. She tilted her head. "You emailed it to yourself years ago. You just didn't know how to hide it properly. You taught me that too." He laughed, hollow. "So this is the end of the lesson?" "No," she said, stepping closer. "This is me showing you what learning looks like." For a moment, they stood inches apart, silence thrumming between them like wire. Then she whispered, "You thought I wanted to destroy you. I only wanted to see if you'd notice when I stopped needing to." He didn't follow her when she left. Outside, the night air was sharp, indifferent. He realized he wasn't angry anymore. He was proud, horrified by it, but proud. She had become what he pretended to be, someone who could turn pain into architecture. Weeks later, a new article appeared online, anonymous, elegant, unmistakably his voice. It was titled "The Student Who Finished the Thought." It ended with one sentence: "The only true form of creation is to teach someone how to erase you perfectly." By the third year, Rafael Ortiz Hahn had disappeared from the public record, as if the university itself had swallowed him. No lectures, no papers, no traces, just a scattering of old students who remembered him as the man who taught them that guilt is only cowardice dressed as ethics. Clara Moreau, meanwhile, had become an institution. Her face appeared on the covers of journals. Her voice threaded through podcasts and symposiums where people debated whether her ideas were liberation or intellectual cruelty. The irony was exquisite. The student who learned how to destroy had replaced the teacher who believed destruction was theoretical. But destruction leaves residue, and she began to feel it. During her book tour in Berlin, a journalist handed her a manila envelope after an interview. Inside were photocopies of handwritten notes, his handwriting, annotating her own first draft. The one he had helped her edit years ago. Across the margins, he'd written phrases like "You misunderstand power and you'll never stop at theory." The last page was signed simply, RH 2018. That night, she dreamed of him, not as the trembling man who had begged her for mercy in the lecture hall, but as he was before all of it, patient, amused, certain he was in control. In the dream, he whispered, "You built me better the second time." She woke with a start, and for the first time since her rise, she couldn't speak. The voice that had dismantled him had gone hoarse. Over the following months, Clara's public appearances grew erratic. Her lectures turned circular, recursive, sentences folding back on themselves, as though she were arguing with an invisible presence. She began quoting him again, unconsciously. "Ruin isn't truth, it's translation," she said once on stage, then froze, realizing she was quoting herself quoting him. The audience thought it was performance art. She knew better. One evening, she returned to her apartment to find a package on her doorstep. No return address again, just a USB drive inside and a note. Every student becomes their teacher eventually. The files contained audio recordings, her own voice from years ago, from the motel. From the early days of seduction, layered with his. Their conversations had been spliced together into something almost musical. A duet of arrogance and curiosity. She listened to the first recording once, twice, then a third time, until the dialogue lost coherence and turned into rhythm. "I taught her how to destroy me," his voice said in one of the clips. "And she did it beautifully." Her voice answered, slightly distorted, "No. You taught me how to become you." That night, she didn't sleep. She filled an entire notebook with sentences she couldn't finish. In the morning, she called her publisher and canceled her next appearance. They begged, she refused. She needed to rewrite something, maybe herself. Weeks later, an anonymous essay appeared online, published under her initials, CM. "The Mirror That Teaches Back." It read like a confession, or maybe a curse. "He is gone now," it said, "but I am haunted by his syntax. Every word I use feels borrowed, already infected by his rhythm. I did not destroy him. I translated him too well." After that, she stopped publishing. Her social media froze. Students reported that her last seminar ended abruptly after she drew a circle on the whiteboard and said, "If you stare long enough into your own theory, it will start quoting you back." When her apartment was finally emptied months later, the only thing left on her desk was a printed transcript of those motel recordings. Edited down to a single final line, half his voice, half hers, indistinguishable. "I didn't destroy you. I completed you." By the fourth winter, Clara Moreau was a silhouette of intellect that no longer belonged to her. She had vanished from public life after The Mirror That Teaches Back, leaving behind fragments, lectures transcribed from memory, half-finished manuscripts. Rumors whispered between graduate students. No one knew where she went. But in the faculty lounges and online forums, her name had become a myth. Some said she'd been institutionalized. Others swore she was teaching under an alias in Eastern Europe. A few claimed to have received anonymous emails at 3 in the morning, short, cryptic lines signed simply, R. And then, one spring, a symposium in Prague announced a keynote by a Dr. R. Hahn. The description was vague, a return to the ethics of destruction from within. Scholars buzzed. The phrase was too familiar, too precise. The day of the lecture, the auditorium was full, academics, journalists, admirers of her vanished brilliance. The lights dimmed, the projector flickered, and on screen appeared Rafael Ortiz Hahn, older, thinner, eyes sunken but steady. "You've come for her," he said, voice calm. "She isn't here." He began reading from a text no one recognized. The title slide read, "I Taught Her How to Destroy Me, Part 2. The essay was written in two voices, alternating paragraphs. His and hers. Her syntax bled into his. The arguments folded together so seamlessly that by the midpoint no one could tell who was speaking. "We were the same argument," he read. "We took turns being the evidence." People shifted uneasily. The air felt electric, wrong. Then came the recording, a low, static-laced track played through the speakers. It was them, from years ago. Their motel conversations slowed down until it sounded like breathing, like the rhythm of two people dissolving into one another. Over it, he spoke softly. "To teach destruction is to build your own ghost. She is mine now, and I am hers." Halfway through, he stopped. His hands trembled. The microphone caught his whisper, "I think she's still writing me." The recording cut out. On the screen appeared a single line in white text. "Destruction is the mercy creation can't afford." Then the lights flickered, and the room went dark. When they came back, he was gone. Only a sheet of paper remained on the podium, his notes. But when someone picked it up, they realized the ink was still wet. The handwriting layered, two different styles, one looping and elegant, the other rigid and slanted, overlapping until indistinguishable. Experts later confirmed it was both of theirs, superimposed perfectly. The last sentence read, "There was never a teacher and student. Only a lesson rewriting itself." That night, someone uploaded a video of the lecture online, though the channel disappeared hours later. The final frame showed an empty auditorium, except for one figure standing near the back. Blurred, face hidden by the projector's glow. A woman. You could almost hear her laugh, soft, exhausted, tender, before the screen went black. A week later, universities began receiving envelopes with unmarked USB drives. Each contained an audio file titled Lesson 9. When played, it was only silence at first, but if you turned the volume high enough, you could hear faint, overlapping whispers, his and hers, teaching each other the same sentence over and over. "I taught her how to destroy me. I taught him how to stay destroyed." By the fifth and final year, Clara Moreau and Rafael Ortiz Hahn had become inseparable in death, myth, and language. Their names appeared side by side in academic papers, whispered at conferences like a prayer no one wanted to admit believing in. No one knew which of them had survived the Prague lecture. No one ever found the body. Only the recording remained, an 87-minute video of a room where two voices merged into one until syntax itself broke apart. Universities banned it. Students shared it in secret, claiming if you listened to it with headphones at night, you could hear a third voice in the static, something neither male nor female, whispering the word "continue." The year after, a posthumous book surfaced, mailed anonymously to philosophy departments across Europe. Its spine was blank, but the title page read simply, "The Lesson That Taught Itself." The author line contained both names, connected by an ampersand carved into the page, as though printed under pressure rather than ink. The text was impossible to categorize, half essay, half dialogue, part diary, part liturgy. It was a study in recursion, two minds dismantling one another in perfect synchrony. The writing shifted mid-paragraph between their voices until the distinction collapsed entirely. Critics couldn't decide if it was a collaboration, forgery, or hallucination. The final section of the book was written in the second person. You are the continuation. You are the next iteration of ruin. Read aloud what you destroy. It became a cult object, analyzed by philosophers, plagiarized by artists, feared by archivists. One professor in Rome who tried to annotate it stopped mid-sentence in her notes and wrote instead, "It's not philosophy. It's contagion." That winter, the first sightings began. A woman lecturing in Buenos Aires under the name Dr. H. Ortiz, sharp, magnetic, her voice eerily familiar. A man teaching comparative ethics in Seoul, introducing himself as Professor M. Clara. Both denied knowing the story. Both used identical phrasing in their lectures. Every teacher builds the student they deserve. The recordings spread online, analyzed frame by frame, each phrase feeding the legend. By spring, a new website appeared, The Destruction Project. It hosted a single audio file, 37 seconds long. When played, it sounded like breathing in rhythm, then a whisper in stereo. We wanted to prove that understanding is a form of violence. We wanted to see what would happen if the lesson never ended. Then a pause, followed by a faint laugh, hers, then his. Layered so perfectly it was impossible to separate them. The file ended there, looping back to silence that felt almost alive. In the end, the archives listed both of them as missing, presumed dead. But those who've listened to Lesson 9 or read the lesson that taught itself insist otherwise. They say the two of them never died, they simply finished the argument by becoming indistinguishable. And if you listen carefully to the recording at dawn, when the static thins and the air itself feels intelligent, you can hear them teaching again, two voices reciting in one breath. I taught her how to destroy me. I taught him how to survive inside the ruin. Now the lesson is yours.